Tak jo, tak já bych vás tady moc rád...
Welcome, everyone, at the international conference organized by organization SOFA, which is part of the PORT project, Understanding Trauma. This conference is called Trauma-Informed Approach as a key to creating supporting environment at school. We have 8 presentations ready for you that will present 8 different topics, 8 different approaches to trauma-informed approach. And before we start, I would like to say that over 60 instructors or trainers have already completed our training, and it is very important for us to create safe environment for them during the trainings, but also we want to create safe environment for everyone in here. There's quite a lot of guests today, quite a lot of participants, so try to find a chair to sit on and be considerate to the other participants. We have some refreshments for you ready during the coffee breaks, and I would also like to ask you, when you get a drink, please keep the cup and reuse it, so you can sign it and reuse it, so that we do not generate too much waste. We also have many guests from abroad, and that's why we have interpreting provided in here as well. The interpreting devices are available in the lobby, so you can get them over there. I would like to extend our thanks to the magistrate of the capital city of Prague, especially Councillor Puzzled, who may actually come and see us today, because the magistrate is actually providing us with a space. So thanks to the city magistrate, we are able to organize this event here in this really nice venue. And now I would like to ask Klára Laurenčíková, the government Councillor for Human Rights, to open the conference officially. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. This is an important conference or seminar, and I'm really happy that trauma-informed approach is a really topic of interest, and many of you here represent schools, so you are actually in the front line, and we're happy to see that you're trying to learn or find a way how to work children that may be more difficult to work with, and thank you for trying to create understanding and safe environment for these children at school as well, because this actually makes it possible for them to start their life appropriately, because when children do not have proper relationships with adults, they do not have boundaries properly set, they do not feel safe, their life is much more difficult. So your role in this is really very important. And when we analyzed the life path of people who succeeded, although they were not born into ideal conditions, we often learn that it's very often a personality in their life, like someone, an instructor from a low threshold club, their sports coach, their teacher. So these people may actually play a very important role in these children's lives, because they try to understand what's behind the problematic behavior of a child. They can motivate the child to attend a particular club, to take interest in a particular leisure time activity. And very often this is a beginning of a new relationship of the child to himself or herself, to the world. So Thank you for being here. Thank you for learning from each other, and thank you for being really interested in the trauma-informed approach. I first learned about this approach some years ago thanks to some of the guests from abroad who are with us today as well. So thank you very much for coming, and thank you for contributing to changing the environment in the Czech Republic, to helping develop a path to well-being of children in the Czech Republic. So thank you very much for supporting the systematic change in the Czech Republic and supporting us in our endeavors. Thank you for being our teachers and mentors, because we all need mentors. In the Czech Republic, there are many children who are born into conditions that are not ideal. According to statistics, in each classroom, there are about 3 children on average that experience domestic violence. We know that there's almost 150,000 children now from Ukraine who are war refugees in the Czech Republic, and before getting to the Czech Republic, they actually experienced many traumatizing events. Many of them are really worried what will happen to their dads, to their brothers, uncles, and they are wondering if the war will ever end and the world will be a safe place for them again. So we need to take care of these children as well. We have to accept them and support them, and we know that they deserve the support. In the Czech Republic, there are more than 20,000 people growing up in poverty as well, in unsuitable living conditions. And according to research, children who do not experience stability move from one place to another very often, do not attend one school for a long time. They change schools very often. They don't get support from within their community, are at risk as well. So it's important to see children as within their complex situation, including the circumstances they live in, and work with the circumstances as well. And it's important to look for ways, but if we have proper tools and proper guideline, it's much easier for us to achieve that. So today we are here to offer you, to introduce to you more of these tools, and I'm really happy that SOFA trainers or instructors to implement and spread these tools and approaches in the Czech Republic, but also in other countries within the Visegrad 4, because we also have colleagues who are adopting or who are starting to adopt these approaches and these tools in other countries. So hopefully this new approach will spread across the entire Central Europe and maybe even beyond its borders. So one more time, welcome, enjoy this meeting, and hopefully we will be able to create environment for the children and to change conditions that children are growing up in together. Thank you very much. Have a nice day. Thank you very much, Clara, for describing the situation in the Czech Republic, for opening this conference. And I would like to add that this conference is also held with the support of the European Commission. It's part of our project called PORT. It's a 2-year project for understanding trauma, and we have a partner in the project. It's an organization, an NGO called ROSA, and there are many people involved in this project. So briefly, I would like to introduce all the participants in the project. So there is an expert team that was established. This team includes special teachers, social workers, other experts. There's also a national supervision team that helps us outline the schedule and the topics for the project. And there's also international supervision team, and some of the members or the members of the international supervision team are here with us today. So thank you all very much for accepting our invitation, and thank you for sharing your experience and your knowledge with us. And hopefully the participants here today will be able to take what they learned today and take it with them to their schools, to their organizations, and start using it straight away. There's also a group of peers. These are young people under 30 years of age, and these people, or these young people, have had a traumatic experience in the past when they were growing up, and they are actually providing us with their feedback. What kind of things, what kind of support would have helped them when they were in a difficult situation, how they could have been helped by their teachers, social workers, etc. So this is a feedback group. The training has already been completed by 56 trainers. Some of these trainers who've been trained are with us in here today, so welcome as well. And they will help us to start organizing these trainings all over the country, and our objective is to have 1,120 personnel trained. So the trainer training has already been completed, and starting this May, we are offering a training, trauma-informed approach as a solution to address difficult behavior. The training has been accredited by the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Labor and Social Affairs. And this training includes trauma-informed approach, PBIS, interdisciplinary cooperation, which is critical and needs to be further developed. In your files, you will find information about this particular training that we offer. You will also find the dates of the training in Prague, in other cities in the Czech Republic. If you live in a different region, or if you represent an institution, an organization that where you would like to organize this training, do not hesitate to contact us. We will help you organize the training. The important thing is that this is not just teacher participant training or trainer participant training. We really want the training to be very interactive and very practical. We also make it possible for participants to practice individual things, to learn individual approaches. And when we were working on the materials for the training, we developed video clips, methodology, and other materials that complement the training. So we'll be happy to provide you with more information. There's also a lot of information on the training in your files. So this is it for the introduction of the project. And now I would like to invite Lenka Felcmanová to deliver her presentation concerning supportive environment at school.
Takže dobrý den, ještě jednou mi dovolte vás tady přivítat jménem SOFA. Věřím, že dnešní konference.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me welcome you on behalf of SOFA. I hope that you'll find this today's conference of inspiration for you, and not only the formal presentations, but also the networking and mingling in the adjacent hall. That's why we decided to organize the conference at this venue, because it allows not only for the formal exchange, but also the informal exchange during the breaks. Our organization is helping children recover from adverse experiences they experience in their childhood. And as my speaker, Clara, our former president, has told you, we are fully devoted to children. I would like to speak today about creating an environment which responds to the needs of children. And that does not pertain to schools only, but also to facilities, any type of facility where we work with children. Our approach is based on the sequential development of brain. We want to work with children based on how their brains function. Human brain is very complex. This is simplistic, really, but we'll be seeing this repeatedly, and therefore I would like to walk you through it. You are all aware of how brain works. You know the brain architecture quite well, and you know that there are systems that pertain to the brain that impact what we can do and how we behave, and also what we cannot do. So, very simplified, the brain stem, the eldest part of the brain where the stress reaction is triggered. It's an autonomous part of the brain which we cannot impact with our will. But this part of the brain actually decides on whether we have access to the higher levels of the brain or not, whether we can approach the situation cognitively or whether we approach it automatically, because the information cannot be processed further. The limbic system, again, it's very complex. And then we have cortex and neocortex. That's the part of the brain that helps us use ratio. But not only do we have access to cortex and neocortex, and traumatized children are usually in a state which does not allow them for access to this part of the brain. Bruce Perry underlines the importance of the fact that brain develops sequentially. All information from the outer world actually goes through the brain stems. The brain stem is a very complex structure. But there is where the most important center is. The brain stem actually decides whether there is threat coming from the outside or not. Traumatized children have sensitized stress reaction system. Their brain sees danger where there is actually no danger, and that is based on their previous experience, their conflicts in the childhood. So when the teacher smashes the door by accident, for example, they perceive it as a threat because that's given by their adverse childhood experience. And these children's lives are then very complicated, and at school they just don't prosper. In the limbic system, there is the emotional reactions. That's where the feelings live, in inverted commas. The brain stem works with the basic bodily functions such as heartbeat, posture or motion, which is supposed to help us. And then the information proceeds to the most rational part, in inverted commas, cortex, where we analyze information and where we are looking for the best answer based on our experience and knowledge. But the first is the brain stem. And if the brain stem evaluates the threat as an extreme threat, it doesn't actually let the information go further, and it dictates the body to react immediately. That's why children behave the way they behave. That's why they're challenging, and many people don't understand that. They perceive it as inadequate. But we should understand why they behave that way, because they can't do any better at that situation, and we have to accept that. It's not against us. It's not ill will. It's just that the children cannot do any better because their brain just works this way, functions this way. Stress reaction system. Again, there is not a single part of the brain that is responsible for that. It's again a very complex issue. You have the front matter, which also plays an important role in there, the front lobes. But the most important element again is the brain stem, the blue spot. Amygdala, hypothalamus, these are systems that participate on the stress reaction. What is really important in here is that the stress reaction is a hormonal reaction. It's a reaction that triggers all types of reactions in our body. It impacts digestion, it impacts the blood pressure, breathing frequency, etc., pulse, and it also causes tunnel vision. It's a chemical reaction in the human body that we need to keep reminding ourselves about this. The three layers of brain are connected to regulation. We keep talking about helping children regulate themselves, regulate their stress reactions, because their stress reactions are sensitized, their self-regulatory capacity is not developed enough. So it's a big issue to help children learn how to do that, and it's going to be a big part of today's conference as well. We'll be talking about how to support children, how to help them self-regulate, and how to work with these children. We want to work not only with children whose systems are sensitized, but we want to work with other children as well. We are looking for solutions that are of benefit not for all children and for adults as well. All these techniques are useful for everybody, really. The pandemic was a source of big stress. Many children started self-regulating themselves in a very strange and dangerous way, such as self-harm, nicotine bags, etc. Our big task now is to show them the safe ways, healthy ways to self-regulate that could be used throughout their lives. You cannot avoid stress, but you can learn how to handle it, and that's very much true with traumatized children. We've got 3 layers of the brain, and we also have 3 ways of regulation, which we will tackle on. Or touch on, sorry. Kaja Johansson will deliver a presentation on brain breaks, which we can use at schools to help children regulate throughout the day and to be really efficient in learning. Again, the brain is the most important element in our body. This is the layers of basic human needs, basic physiological needs, hunger, thirst. This is also responsible for not being cold, etc. These are basic human functions that need to be met, and we need to think about how to fulfill these, or how to comply with these physiological needs, or how to meet these physiological needs of children at school. And this is very much true not only vis-a-vis children, but also vis-a-vis teachers. When I ask teachers whether they always have a chance to eat, drink, go to the toilet when they need to, or when it's ideal, oftentimes they say no. I eat when I'm really hungry, when I'm running from one classroom to another classroom. I go to the bathroom only only when there is time, and of course that kicks back and causes stress reactions. The brain stem is watching whether your needs are being met. The same is true with sleep. The brain needs sleep, and sleep deprivation is a real problem. It is something what really negatively impacts the human capacity to use cognitive and executive functions. Yet another important issue is the need of safety, security, predictability. You remember that pandemic was really difficult in terms of predictability. Nobody knew what was going to happen the day after. The same with the war. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. It's very difficult to adapt to that. On the other hand, if you have to see a dentist tomorrow, it's going to be painful. It's not going to be pleasant, but it's going to take only half an hour. I've been through it. I've done it before. And so it's quite foreseeable, and you can live with it, but you can't live with unpredictable difficulties. So let's make the rules more predictable. Let's make the environment for the children more predictable. We all need predictability, but traumatized children need predictability much more because their life is chaos. And at least at schools, we can offer some kind of stable, structured environment. That's very important for these children to know what's ahead of them, what to expect. Of course, the need of love, acceptance, a sense of belonging, that's really important. Relationship, that's the most important tool the teacher has. That's the most healing thing. We have to be really aware of that. We need to nurture relationships. I was really happy to hear the results of the Center of Public Opinion. That was a survey of parents' opinion of the pending changes in the school curricula. It's really difficult to understand what parents want, really, and the needs are so diverse. Some parents really want this drill, boom, boom, boom. Some other parents really want learning by playing, etc. It's difficult to meet the needs of parents. But this survey was focusing on relationships and helping relationships. And I must say that all parents agreed in this survey that this is what they want for their children. They want good relationships with children or relationships of the school staff and children, and they want to nurture that. This relational support is really important. Yet another important thing is the need to be appreciated. If you appreciate children, if you praise them, you help them be more self-confident. You raise you boost their self-esteem. The biggest problem to well-being in the Czech Republic, the biggest limitation is the lack of trust, people have in themselves. People oftentimes don't believe that they can succeed. Children also are not told at home often enough that they are successful. Because if you feel successful, then you prosper. And what I really like about PBIS is this very strict care for self-confidence, this stress on self-confidence. We've heard many times about how many times this is the rule 4-to-1. How many times we have to praise the child once we discipline the child. 1 discipline to 4 praises. I've talked about it many times on repeated occasions. It's really important that teachers praise children, and they have a lot of praises, parked in their head. So if I have to discipline the child, I really have to immediately think about praises so that the child knows that I care for them and I like them. So when the needs are met, then the internal motivation for learning will be strong. The need to fulfill the potential, one's own potential, to explore the world, to do what I'm good at. That's really important. Learning becomes fun then, and there is will to learn, there is will to overcome obstacles, to fulfill my own potential. That's very much related to the elements of well-being we've defined holistically. It's all intertwined, really. And it needs to be in harmony. And I think this harmony is actually pretty comprehensible, but we have to keep reminding ourselves of that. Okay, let me look at the individual layers. What actually our brain needs. What do we need to provide to children to meet their physiological needs and also to meet our physiological needs? By all means, it's important, it sounds like a cliche, to drink and eat regularly. We know that there is a growing number of parents who don't have money for school lunches. Schools need to see that their children eat regularly, eat properly. We've got children who forget to eat during the break. They play, they run around, they play on their phone, but they don't eat. And then they get crazy. They get hungry, hangry, but angry from hunger, and that's a real problem. So we have to keep reminding children of the fact that they need to eat regularly, especially at times when they are in this growing spurt. Ventilation and heating, important. Brain is very sensitive to lack of oxygen. When you are in a room when there is no fresh air, you keep falling asleep. You don't want to be there anymore, even though the presentations are really interesting. You just want to run away. In winter, windows are closed. And this past winter, windows were super closed because energies were so expensive. Now it's no longer needed, so please keep opening windows. Watch your children. When you see children in the class who are getting red in their face, obviously they're sweating from lack of oxygen or they're hot. Do something. You have to move them maybe closer to the window, or tell them to take their sweater off, or send them to the bathroom to wash their face with cold water. If you do that, you can actually prevent stress reaction and demanding behavior. When the child goes into a tantrum, then it's very difficult to handle it. I'm a short person, and therefore I can tell that's very difficult to sit on chairs for me. You know, if you sit on a chair which doesn't allow you to reach your feet to the floor, that's pretty difficult. Big chairs make my life have been making my life difficult, and I know that I've had conferences where I was just sitting and hoping for the conference to end because it was so uncomfortable. So we can change that. We should really do our best to help children feel more comfortable. School chairs are usually really hard to sit on. I know teachers are against, yet another thing, against going to the toilet during the lesson. but sometimes it's important. It's something what we need to allow children to do. But let's also keep reminding them of the fact that that's what the breaks are good for.
Now, including of sensomotoric activities or movement or exercise is a topic that we will hear a lot about today, and these are actually key or very important elements in helping children keep their attention at school, because children need to move to be able to approach the higher levels of their brain and their capacity. So that's why we have to find a structured way to allow some kind of exercise to the children. And we can see that because very often they may be rocking on the chair, they may be playing with the pens, and there are many ways how to help them. And Kaya will tell us how to work efficiently with the brain breaks during classes at school. And there are also some tools or aids that we can use because the sensomotoric regulation is triggered by the sensors that are in our muscles, on our joints, in our ears, the balance center, and also there are many receptors or sensors on our palms. So it's also very useful to use tools to relax. And for some children, it is useful to use some of other tools to focus better. And if we have a chance to spend time outdoors, either during class breaks or during classes, it's very useful. If we have room for some exercise at schools, it's also very useful because we help children to regulate the need for exercise, for movement. Even if you use something like cards for the children to look at, to touch, it's also part of the sensomotoric motivation. So remember, this may also help. And some children really need to move a lot. They need to move their body, they need to move their legs, hands, they fidget a lot. So then we can use many fidget toys, and they are very useful for adults as well, actually. So if you don't have them, try to get some of these. We got inspired in the psychiatric children for Center for Children. So if you see the little rings in the top right corner, we also have them in SOFA in our offices, and we keep them with us. It's very discreet, but also it's a very refreshing thing for the brain to play with these. And if there are children who fidget a lot, who rock on their chairs, you can use the different kinds of the seat cushions. You can use some kind of rings, because in the orofacial area, the mouth and tongue are also very much innervated. So some children will lick or bite things. So you may offer something else than a pen, actually, to play with. So there are now special things, special aids that you can offer the children. Sometimes it can be just a straw in the drink bottle, because children can suck their drink, and it's also a self-regulating activity, actually. These are photos that we made in an elementary school in Norway. So you see there's a kind of rubber band attached to a chair, and very often we put them in a school desk. So this is for the feet, so children can actually put their feet in there and kind of rock just the feet. And there's also a teacher who started to use these rubber bands in her classroom, and actually other teachers from her schools were visiting her classroom to see how come the children are so quiet, but this actually helps them focus because they somehow satisfy their need for movement. There are blankets because there are many receptors on the outer side of the upper arms, and lycra is very useful for that. So you will see children who kind of wrap themselves and cover themselves in sweaters. So this may also be helpful. This is the heavy blanket that you can use to comfort yourself and calm down yourself, because the extra pressure actually also helps the body to regulate different tensions and to regulate and accommodate the needs of the brainstem. And all these things can be offered to the children even before their stress reaction is triggered or aggravated. So this actually prevents a situation where we have to stop our activity in the classroom and deal with a particular pupil or student who's having problems currently. The need of safety. This is very important, and it is very important to agree on rules, on expectations with children. In the Czech Republic, the classroom rules may be different for individual classes. So even teachers within one school may not be quite sure what are the rules in a particular classroom, because they will know about their class, what they agreed on with the class where they are the class teachers, but in other groups of children, in other classes, it may be much more difficult. So it's very useful to agree on a common set of rules for the entire school. And again, the PBIS system highlights this and works very nicely with setting the rules and expectations. And it's also useful to set a daily schedule, because children affected by trauma may have troubles following the schedule or to realize where they should be at a particular point of time. So that's very important for them to know what's going to happen in the next moment. And this is often used with children who are on the autistic spectrum, but it's also very helpful for younger children in the elementary school. It's very helpful for them to actually see what kind of activities are ahead of them on a particular day. So they may have it on a notice board or in their notebook. And change equals stress. Any change represents stress. And some children are not very tolerant to change. So if a substitute teacher needs to come to a classroom the next day, you can prepare for this situation. So it's important to inform the children if you know that something's going to be different. Of course, sometimes there will be moments when you cannot tell, when you cannot expect a particular change. But it's always useful to talk to the children what's going to happen. For example, if you go even for a school excursion, some children may be stressed, so it helps to talk to the children about where you're going to go, what means of transport you're going to use. You can show them some pictures where you're going to, and this will help them get used to the situation and to start looking forward to the trip and to decrease their stress. And of course, we have to take into account the situation, the transition between break between the classes and the start of the class. And some children have the capacity, are capable of calming down with the start of a new class. For some children, however, it is much more difficult and they need some kind of support. So we may suggest some kind of activity, like do a few squats, do a few half push-ups, because this will help them activate activate the sensomotoric regulation, and these may be a good options for them how to start the class, how to start focusing on what is coming in the class. But it's very important to talk about it with the children and to practice it with the children, not at the very beginning of the class, of course, when the child may be stressed, but we have to practice it beforehand when the child can focus on this. And of course, we can not only, by doing this, we not only teach the children a particular physical activity, but we teach the consequences of the physical activity as well, how the child calms down. This is an example of expectations that should be set. There should not be many, there should be 3 to 5, and they should be some positive statements and should include positive values. And we should always include examples of behavior leading to achieving these values, because if you only list a couple of values, it may be difficult for the children to understand what is wanted from them. So it's always useful to share examples. For example, we have safety, and then we list a few activities how to achieve this value, how to achieve this expectation. And of course, we also can break it down to individual school environments, how we behave at in the classroom, in the hall, in the school cafeteria, at the school bathrooms, and this way we contribute to creating safe environment for the children at school, and this way we also teach children to set further values and know how to achieve these values. And the important thing is that we all somehow relate to these values, and this is also part of the PBIS system that we will hear about. The important thing, and I have already mentioned this, what we want from children, we need to practice with children, because we learn to behave in exactly the same way as we learn our mathematics, the calculus, for example. So you set expectations, you give examples of specific behaviors, and then you practice these behaviors so that the children can match specific behavior with the values and with the expectations that may be more abstract for them. And PBS also includes a very important thing, and it is a uniform reaction to different types of behavior, so that the children know what kind of reaction will follow after some behavior. So there should be no surprise for the children, because they know in advance, if you behave this way, this will be the reaction that you can expect. And then, of course, it is much easier to manage a particular situation. It's much easier to respond to demanding behavior. And if the behavior is approached consistently by all the teachers always, it's much easier, because it does not trigger more demanding behavior on the part of the children. And when we talk about safety, we also have to work with the needs of the child and the current need of the child, because the child may be 13 years old, but some of the reactions may be on the level of a 4-year-old children, for example. So we really have to focus on the specific capacities or abilities that we want to develop. And when we work with traumatized children, every time we see that they may have some problems with their focus. And if we have if we ask the same of them as from other children, it will traumatize them more, because it's not the lack of will on their side, it's the lack of ability. They just cannot do it. And the more sense we make and the more senses we include in teaching children, the more likely the children are to learn. So we try to use different sensory stimuli, and we also have to take into consideration that some children may respond negatively to some, for example, situation like too bright light or too much noise. So we have to make sure that we help children in this respect as well. So we can allow baseball cap in the classroom, for example, so that their eyes are a bit shielded from the bright light, or we can offer a headset so that they kind of hide themselves from too much noise. And a very important element of feeling safe is to have things under control. And this is something that we all experienced during the COVID pandemic. We all experienced how difficult it is when you lose control. And this is actually the easiest thing we can do for the children. Like, for example, you have a worksheet to work on now, and do you want to use your pencil or a colored pencil? So we're giving a choice to the child, and the child has control in the situation. The child can choose whether he or she will choose just a pencil or a colored pencil. And of course, it's not like telling the child to do whatever he or she wants. We just narrow down the options, and with gradually we may increase the number of options. We can increase the means of support that we use to support the child. It's very helpful to have a corner like this in the classroom. It's some kind of peaceful zone or relaxation zone in the classroom. And usually children take 2 to 3 minutes. You can have a small clock in there so that children can watch the time, and they can retire in there for a while. And of course, we have to teach them how to use this calm zone. And when they enter the zone consciously, and when they know how to behave in there, what to do in there, for example, to do a breathing exercise in there, or to do some other activity that they have practiced before, and we provide different aids and tools, the children can use it very efficiently. And of course, we have to teach them how to use this option before they actually need to use it, so that we don't have to stop activities in the classroom. So, for example, it's a great thing to have a project at the beginning of a term with the small kids and teach them how to use this particular space. This is an example of a playroom where children can go with a company of an adult, where they can get involved in some activities that support sensomotoric regulation and calm down in case their stress levels are really escalated and there's no other way how to regain control. And of course, relationships have to be discussed. It needs to be a topic that is talked about at most schools. It is not a specific part of the curriculum, so children are not really provided with structured space to develop this skill. But it's very important to consciously work with the children in the classroom to teach them interpersonal relations, to apply the principles of respecting communication and trauma-informed approach. And Because my presentation is getting to the end, I would like to mention one more thing, and it's the need for recognition. And you may say, this is very simple, to recognize or to praise someone. But when you have children who may find themselves in a more difficult situation or who haven't been successful in a long term, then you really have to do this consciously. You have to believe in the success of each and every child. You have to trust the children that they can be successful. Although in the past you have witnessed many moments when they failed, you just cannot give up. You have to keep on supporting them. And this is very important. This is something that we still need to remind ourselves, because our trust in them helps them to build healthy self-consciousness. And many of these children do not get this kind of support at home. And teachers at schools are the only adults in their lives who can offer this to children very often. So it's very important for the children to have someone who trusts in them, who takes them and accepts them as they are. And one more thing I would like to mention. We have a very good experience with formative feedback. It helps improve academic results of the children. It helps improve their behavior, because it's always better to use positive feedback and to point out the positive things in their behavior we want to develop. It's much better than pointing out the failures or some negative things. So reinforcing the positive behavior is very important. We have to try to look for things, for moments when a child succeeds, and point them out for the child, because this increases the chance of repeating these things in the future. This is something that we're still learning in the Czech Republic. We are really very modest. And we do not really, because in the Czech Republic, people may not be overconfident. They may not want to praise themselves, and they do not want to highlight their strengths. But it's very important to teach children to identify their strong points, their strengths, and to develop them. And this is one of the most important things they can actually take away from the school with them, because if they know what their strengths are, they can develop them further and they can use them in their benefit and also for the benefit of the entire society. So I hope I have covered everything I wanted to cover. Thank you very much for your attention. You see, it's no magic. These are pretty simple things, but we have to know why we're doing them and how to do them to really be efficient in what we're trying to achieve. Thank you for your attention.